we got to catch Neil from the S&P who gave a talk here.
Right.
What are you thinking about? What did you talk about? But also what's driving you? What are you most interested in? Because obviously you're sitting on top of a lot of trends.
Thanks so much for having me, Lori.
Yeah.
We think about the metaverse somewhat holistically and the way that virtual worlds and new hardware and new interfaces span the gamut from industrial to the enterprise down to the consumer as well. It's always great to come to a show like this, but to come here and see how the virtual worlds are expanding, how things are improving and like serving individual users and companies is really fascinating. So I think you saw a lot of smart glasses come to market over the past year and a half or 2 years, and now the interfaces are getting better, right? The way that you can add a little bit of AI in there and you don't need to necessarily gesture for control. You can use natural languages to bring data in and out of that interface. I think those are really fascinating movements.
So do you have something from the glasses, besides the interesting design partnerships?
I would say if you've been looking through the glasses for the last 3 to 5 years, which I have to varying degrees, what you notice is that the image quality gets a lot better. The movement from LCOS light sources to micro LED is really making a huge difference. We've taken different approaches to sizing the long-term opportunity inside of like how many people will really buy smart glasses. But if it is truly the cell phone or smartphone replacement that you see different companies like Apple and Meta trying to position it as, then they're going to need to solve for factors like that. We're trying to get developers excited because none of this hardware makes any sense if no one's making any
Right, you need the
software for
community as developers pushing it, or do you think there'll be an enterprise category that just explodes?
Yeah.
Like workmen on a pole. And then let's forget about media and entertainment, because my pals who are all struggling for work in LA right now, I keep thinking they should move to enterprise and take their skills, but is it ever going to really come to the consumer?
So I guess a couple things that I think about. One is B2B, selling to enterprise and industrial is a great business.
Yeah.
It's not as big as a really big consumer business. When you start selling to consumers, right, the sky's the limit. Look at a company like Niantic, right?
Yeah.
That had always found different ways to implement their visual positioning systems and their mapping data. But when they really hit, they hit with Pokemon. And you saw them.
Love story too, with people that use Pokemon,
Absolutely.
right? It created marriages. That was John Hankey's vision.
Such a cultural force.
People out and meeting and exercising
Moving.
and meeting each other instead of
Exactly.
sitting at your computer.
So now, Niantic made such a huge success with that, they have sold off that part of the business to Scopely, which is a mobile company that is really good at maintaining and scaling operations of that size. And so a lot of the core of Niantic has moved on to this enterprise focus again.
Right.
So they're trying to bring what they learned from the consumer area back into the enterprise and industrial space.
Got it.
And I think you're going to see that sort of flow continue in this space.
Okay.
Some of the CapEx and deep investment plays are naturally going to gravitate toward enterprise, industrial, military use cases, because that's where a lot of the deep pockets are.
So we saw at a variety of booths, I couldn't tell if it was prosumer or if it was an enterprise solution.
Yeah.
And there's a blending there. So that's where I always get confused at a show like this, is who is your audience right now?
Right.
And all the people that are here are my colleagues who are all developing, but they're also fans too.
Right, they like it.
So is it just B2B here? What's going on? It's so confusing.
Yeah, so it is a lot of B2B, and I think what you're saying is exactly right. You look at what they have and you'll say things like, how much does this cost, or where can I get this? And they'll say, it's not for sale right now. And then there is some confusion on that level. I think.
So one nerdy question for you is, are you looking also at where processors are going? Because talking about CES and other shows like that, all of a sudden now at a consumer show, people are talking about processors.
Right.
And years ago, Intel would be on the floor at CES, and I'd always be like, why are you here? Because no one asked for an Intel chip at the time. Now people are asking for NVIDIA. So do you feel like the conversation around processors is moving to consumer?
I think that's such an interesting point. So evidence of the chip brand driving the hardware, and maybe there's no better example of that than NVIDIA, right? How coveted that silicon is right now. Qualcomm is on the floor. They have been a pretty big vanguard and pushing forward SoCs that are dialed in to meeting the needs of these developers.
Yeah.
I think it can be very iterative, it can be very nerdy, it can be very, what exactly does this X 1.0 2x more transistors on the chip. What does that really mean for
Right,
the end
right.
user? There's always the need for more headroom. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? More
Yeah.
processing power is better.
Because that if we could detangle it from this,
Yeah.
isn't that the win-win? If the processors in these devices.
This is what we hear over and over again from and the component suppliers, because it's not just SoC, right? It's the waveguide technology, and it's the light source, and it's the cameras, and it's the gesture tracking. When these component manufacturers go to the manufacturers or the companies that are going to make the product to sell to a consumer or an enterprise level customer, they're saying it's still too big, still too hot, still running too much battery.
Yeah.
So everyone's trying to shave that down, and the people who can meet those needs while still delivering a robust product, they're going to win this race, and they're going to win it in a big way, and in the way that the same SoC manufacturers won super huge in the smartphone race as well. So people
Right.
don't want to be left out of that. If and when
if
that
it
transition
happens,
happens.
if they get to it. Because what didn't happen, and they're stupid, I spent $300 on that Rabbit AI device. I was like the 5th shipment or something, and by the time
Nice.
I got it, it was so dumb.
You're
So-
not into it?
Yeah, and it was just dumb.
What kind of things do you do with it, if anything?
I tried to just use the apps on
Yeah.
it, pull content from
Sure.
the cloud, and I just thought, it's too annoying to try and hook it up account-wise, and it just wasn't worth it. I'm staring at it. I put it next to my old Google goggles. I'm just like, it's in the box of old stuff already for me. So,
we all have that box.
yeah,
right?
so is the single AI device the answer, or is it the glasses?
Yeah.
What is it? Like, that we're going to see a lot of that coming out this year too, the single solution.
That was a big rallying cry last year, and it's still around, right? Is that smart glasses are the premier interface for AI. At least that's what they would have you believe. And I think there's a strong case to be made.
Yeah.
It sees what I see, right?
Yeah.
It knows where I am.
And then someone also knows that you're watching them.
right.
Because when you're wearing these things, people
It's,
are
what
like,
is that?
I know everyone knows everything we're doing now. I don't think I'm that interesting, but I think
those are the privacy concern push and pull,
Yeah,
right? Is
yeah.
that, suddenly you have a camera looking at me all the time. Maybe you already do anyway, but we're slowly moving into a low privacy society.
Yes.
For better or for
Yeah.
worse. And these vendors may be able to take advantage of that over the long
right,
term.
because it won't be a question that we'll be asking.
Or fewer
maybe.
people. Maybe it's a generational thing.
Right. Oh my God. But just last question, because I really could talk to you forever,
Sure.
especially in the role that
Likewise.
you sit in. But so you walk away from this show, what is the one thing that you're like, that was cool?
Yeah.
Just as the person, because some of this is a toy store
Yeah.
sometimes for us.
Exactly.
For those of us that go to a lot of tech shows, in the end, we're just a person responding to toys. Right. Is there something that you saw today, yesterday, that you're just like, that's a game changer,
So
or really interesting?
It's such a good question. I'm going to say two things. And the first is an emerging device class. And one of them is right behind us here. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but
The stereoscopic.
it's the 3D TVs. It's the glassesless 3D TVs. Sony has one here. Acer has one. I talked to a company that's coming up called Distance. They're composed of a few ex-Vario employees. Do you remember Vario? They had the really expensive, really great VR headset.
Yeah.
Which some of that tech, I don't know the exact tech, but that idea was adopted by Apple Vision Pro. That they were on the vanguard of mixed reality in that respect, being real with the virtual. And they had a heads-up display using a similar technology. Imagine being in a car and all of your dash is instead right up on the windshield. Some of that already exists, but think of it to the nth degree, like a lot of depth.
High quality. Like
Yes,
high quality.
exactly.
Yeah.
Vivid imagery.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of that's the new that feels like that's been around for a couple of years, but like they're ready to show
Seeing it get integrated into real life
Exactly.
solutions could be really interesting.
The second thing I just want to call attention to is that the VR gaming developers that are in attendance here are not only showing their products, but are looking at what's up and coming. This is a really tightly knit, dedicated community. I think the common knowledge would have you believe that VR gaming had a low ceiling in terms of competing with consoles and legacy gaming. And I think maybe that's true, particularly from a TAM or a revenue opportunity. This vertical's not dead. These guys are still out there. They're still trying to crack the nut. They're trying to fix things around motion sickness, around engagement, around feeling like when you get into VR, you're in a dead mall or something like that.
Yeah.
These guys are still working hard on that. There's a lot of talented.
And they launched the gaming area this year.
That's right. This was the first year with the gaming hub. So those guys have always been here.
Yeah.
And now they had a place to rally around. And it was an exciting event.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And plus all the gaming modalities that are being used in everything else anyway. So now let's just call it what it is.
Exactly.
Because I love when I collect points on my different things.
Gaming is hardly confined to games anymore. So many things are being gamified, pushing outside those boundaries. So a really interesting time.
That's really cool. Thank you, Neil, so much.
Thank you, Lori.
From the S&P.